Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast, where today I am really excited to welcome Preston Plowman, who is the co-founder and CEO of OnBrand PLM system, which is a system that I have just been continually impressed by. And so I wanted to have him on today to kind of explain a little bit about the system itself, how he got into it, and we can also talk a little bit about why I think it's such a good solution. But thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to talk about all things software and fashion tech and PLM.
Absolutely. I love it. Cool. Well, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how you got involved in like PLM systems? It seems like such a weird little niche-y thing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it is. And my story is actually really interesting because, probably like everybody else who's familiar with PLM, there was a point in which they had never heard about it before. And
yes.
One day that light switch flipped and now here I am. So, it all started for me before founding OnBrand. I was a consultant for a major global firm called Boston Consulting Group and spent a number of years there doing effectively very similar work to, what we're doing now. So
cool.
Working with merchants and category managers and bringing new products to market and supply chain optimization, all that type of stuff. And, notice my customers using a type of software and they had lots of interesting feedback and complaints about it.
Yes.
And they were also paying a lot of money for it while not actually using it. So,
interesting. Not using it.
Yes, because, the design and development team preferred to still work in Illustrator and Excel and communicate with their factories via that. And then they would just plug into the PLM once they were ready to move something to production, because that was just how software worked. So they had to hand jam all that data back into PLM, which would spit to ERP. Then they could place a PO. And so that process really opened my eyes to what is this software? Why won't they let us get rid of it if they're paying a bunch for it, but they're not using it? Even got to the point where they weren't able to upload any pictures into the software.
Wow.
And that just really blew my mind of it's, this was 2020 probably at that point. I can't believe we're at this point and you can't upload images into your design and product development software.
Yeah, that's
in Apparel. Pretty mind-blowing stuff. And so that's what just opened my eyes to the software space, right? Of what this is, what the problem set is, and spend a couple more years doing very similar work, working with designers, developers, and I'm not myself a designer or developer, so don't ask me to bring an awesome collection to market. But yeah, that was really what sparked the desire in me to not only modernize the space for those massive companies eventually, but more of the problem that I saw was where all the growth in fashion apparel is, which is these small emerging brands that are much closer to their customers. And they have very similar problems and pain points, right? Whether you're Nike or LVMH or you're just getting started, the process of bringing clothing and designing it to market is pretty similar.
Same, yeah.
And there was no structure there, no software tool that was available for these smaller brands to get off the ground. And so, that's kind of been our goal the last couple of years.
I love it so much. I think there's so much in that exactly for the small brands, because there have been times where we've been working with a startup or we're working with a new client and they're coming to us asking okay, we really need to get organized. How are we going to do this? Should we be investing in an Asana or a project management system? Or I've heard about this thing called PLM. What should we do? And 9 times out of 10, I end up saying, I don't really think all of the project management systems are quite right for our industry, but in good conscience, I can't give you a recommendation for a PLM system because a lot of times they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in. And so that's why I've been so super interested in what you guys have been doing in OnBrand, and would love for you to kind of talk a little bit too about how you then developed this software and how you worked with those designers to get everything into it that's in it, because it is so robust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you point out a really interesting feature actually that we love, and that's our project management feature. And it's pretty differentiating for where we're at. And maybe it's helpful for me to explain kind of where I see ourselves in the world of PLM, right?
Yeah, please do. That's perfect.
PLM's been around for, 30 to 40 years. Most people who have used it have something very specific in their mind that they're thinking of like, oh, like it's going to take forever and it's just like
Yes.
nobody wants to use it, right? We didn't want to be that. And so really think about at the very earliest stages of a brand's life, you're not really doing a lot of product development or design. You're probably relying on your factory or an agent to do that.
Hmm.
And so it's not until you start internalizing some of those functions that you're like, okay, now is the time for me to start thinking about having a software tool to do this. So I'm not just in Excel and Photoshop and Illustrator.
Yep.
And so there are some tools that specifically help with, whether it's a tech pack template or helping you generate some of that tech pack stuff, but not really like fully encompassing how do I take this product from idea to production approval and through prototyping. The other side was these huge, massive, expensive PLMs that you're mentioning that, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and, 2 years, if not more, getting it up and running. So we wanted to fit kind of right in between that and be a tool that has the enterprise level functionality and robustness, but also is a tool that you can start with and grow with all the way through, from start to finish.
Wow, it's so good. And just kind of as a little bit of transparency, so I have used a lot of different PLM systems. I used Web PDM at Abercrombie and Fitch. We reviewed Flex PLM at Fossil. That was the one we were going to use. I've used Web Gallery when I was at Miller. I've used Unique and Centric when I was at Pearl. And then when I was at Specialized, we actually implemented Flex PLM. And I will say what Preston is saying about the launch time and like the ramp up time and the implementation time is so true. And a lot of it's because when you take these softwares like right out of the box and you try to just implement them exactly as is, there's always something that's missing or not quite right for your brand, or you have to zhuzh it in some way to really get the information to read the way that you want it to. And it can take a year or two to get all of your information in there and to get it to work the way that you want it to. And I think that that's such an amazing solution that you guys have come up with, because it's such a hindrance. Like, you're already spending all this money. I want to start using the damn tool. Like, let me get in there.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, it's a barrier that oftentimes when we're talking to new brands, we have to really overcome, because if they're in a position like you and they've seen it done before, they kind of assume it's going to be a big burdensome process and it's going to be miserable.
Yeah.
And I like to say that we're modern software. That can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But the way that I think of it is most of these other tools that you're talking about, they're all great in their own ways, right? And they've been successful for a reason, but they're built with a heavy professional services element involved, right? Think of your like .com era software systems where you're going to have a team of people come in and custom write a bunch of software and train you on it and then implement. And that's just not how software works in 2025. And how the approach we took was, for the most part, we understand deeply how brands operate. And every brand has their own unique method, from what they want to do, how they want to do it. And so our goal was to build a platform that is flexible enough that the user, with a little bit of help from us, can configure the system out of the box to what they need it to do, as opposed to let's custom write software every time you want any little thing changed.
Right.
And then you're stuck for 20 years with that software company because, they're the only ones that can do exactly what I want to do and how I want to do it. Right.
So we also used to find too that every time we customized something, it actually broke something in the back end, right? Like there was something that right out of the box, like it would have worked and we would have been getting like updates every year and all of this kind of stuff. But every time we went to customize it, it broke that. And so every time there was an update or a refresh or a new version of the software, we couldn't get it because we had customized it. And so I think that's also kind of a weird little niche thing that a lot of people don't know about needing to customize the software, which makes your solution so cool that you don't need to do that.
Yeah, that's actually a good way, maybe like a good litmus test for people.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're thinking about like, okay, what kind of tool do we have? Think about when you use your phone, whether it's Apple or Android, or you're using, one of these modern project management tools like Monday or Asana or Notion. It's true software as a service where you're not sitting there and wondering, do I have to pay to upgrade this? Like, do I have to wait a whole year for the next batch of upgrades to be ready? That's not how it works, right? You just, all of a sudden you're like, hey, my phone says to
Yeah.
accept this update, and it's going to update itself overnight. Now have access to a bunch of cool new stuff,
Right.
right? So that's what modern software is. That's what OnBrand does. Is we're pushing updates all the time, launching new features because we don't have that constraint of such hyper customized tooling that
Yeah.
we have to go in proprietary to every company and custom write all the code so it'll update properly without breaking. That's kind of a good litmus test for people to go through.
It's so good. Tell us a little bit about some of the most recent updates that you guys have been able to put out, because I know you guys have been doing a lot, especially on that project management side, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we really launched what we call projects earlier this year. There were some earlier iterations of that, but we've since broken it out. And maybe a good way to explain it is think of core PLM of like I want all my data and I want to be able to create products and leverage all the libraries that I have to
Yep.
create product faster. That's kind of the core selling point of a PLM, right?
Yeah.
Table stakes type stuff. Like I need a materials library, I need a fabrication library, I need a spec library, and I need
Yes.
to combine all this stuff together to create styles, and then eventually generate a tech pack is usually
Exactly.
the output.
Yeah, that's a great way of
Um,
describing it. Yeah.
and the addition of what we've done now with the project management piece is it's actually really interesting. You mentioned earlier like Monday and Asana and these people wondering like, should that be the first thing I do? Of like, I need to answer the question of where am I at
Yeah.
in production and what do I need to do today? What does my factory need to do? And the only way for people to get visibility into that is some sort of time and action calendar,
Yes.
which often is like in some software tool like that. And now if they have a PLM, they've got two sources of truth,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because it's Asana's got the process and the data is in PLM. And so
Exactly.
we've now combined those two so that all of it syncs together and you don't ever have to be wondering like, okay, do I have to update two places or is it update?
Yeah.
It is. And so that's a great piece about it.
No, I think that's one of my favorite things that I was shown during the demo was just the way that like not so especially as me as like a consultant, right? Like so I work with different
Mm-hmm.
clients and when we build our on brand system, like we're going to need to have different timelines for different clients. Some are moving a little bit faster than others, and the capability is there. But there's
Mm-hmm.
also that accountability piece where like I can see color coded and really easily on my personal dashboard, like I've got these things to do today and oh crap, I forgot to do that yesterday. So it's overdue and I need to prioritize that. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
hands down, I think that's one of the things that throughout my history, we have always tried to shove into a PLM system that wasn't inherent to it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I love that you guys are already thinking about that and just doing it and then releasing it to everybody. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sick of being stuck on the sidelines of the apparel industry and you just want to be put in the game? Then join our 100% free workshop, Secrets Behind Billion-Dollar Apparel Brands, and learn the strategies, tactics, and secrets used by the most successful companies in the world. We'll cover everything from setting your brand standards to big brand line planning and executive level processes. In this workshop, you're going to learn how to name your target customer, rationalize your line, calculate product margins, roll up your revenue, and see potential profits while figuring out how to build a unique calendar for your brand. You're going to learn that and so much more. Are you ready to take your apparel business to the next level? Sign up today and use code PODCAST for a 10% discount on the full Business of Apparel online course or any of our mini courses after the workshop. Visit www.thebusinessofapparel.com/secrets to register. Don't miss out.
Yeah, and we released it to all our existing customers. We sent an email out with some video walkthroughs of like, hey, here's how to set it up. We make ourselves super available, so some of our customers reached out and said, hey, can we get some help with this? And
Yeah.
we jumped on a call, but it's there and it's updated immediately for them, and it's also set up in a method that allows people to customize it and configure it how they want. Like
I
a
love it.
time and action calendar is hard, especially with like approval steps. So we put a lot of work into making it as flexible as you need it to be, but it's there in a way that allows our customers to handle it on their own without having to, reach out to us and spend a couple of weeks paying for our engineers to build a proprietary solution. It's there for them to customize how they need it.
Yeah, I think that's so important because timelines change a lot, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and if I can't go in and manipulate that myself without like needing someone to hold my hand, that could be crucial. I mean, that could make or break the timeline right there, right? Like that we're trying to
Mm-hmm.
follow this project management system and things have shifted or changed, or we're not launching this now, or I don't know, new leadership has come in and said we need to do things a little bit slower, whatever it is. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much there that is really, really important. I love it.
Definitely.
Cool.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like super nerdy. Like one of my favorite other things that I was shown during the demo, and this is, I don't know if enough people will appreciate this, but the ability to toggle between inches and centimeters in a tech pack was one of my favorite things. I haven't seen that in a lot of other PLM software solutions. And we have one client whose factory requires us to be in centimeters, and I've done my whole career in inches, so my brain just doesn't kind of click that way. So for
Yeah.
me to be able to hit a button and convert inches to centimeters, like it's little brilliant things like that that I think
Mm-hmm.
really made me love the software.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have a backstory? Did someone kind of say to you like, I need this?
Yeah, it does. And actually, we spent so much time working on specs and getting that to work because there's a lot going on
Oh my
behind the
God,
scenes.
yeah.
Because not only are we doing the math for you, converting back and forth, whether you're in inches or whether you want to work in centimeters, we do the math live for you. But then also you can toggle between viewing your exact measurements. So instead of the grade rules, I want to see exactly how this is scaling, up or down from a reference spec. And then you can toggle quickly to the grade rules and you can work seamlessly in either one in centimeters and inches. And so it's something if you try to do in Excel would,
Oh my God, it would, blow up this spreadsheet.
Yes, it's really not possible in Excel.
Yeah.
But these are the little things that like I love to geek out on it too. And it's hard to unless you're a technical designer who's really in the depths
Yep.
of like doing this every day, you don't really appreciate it until you see it, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, like I had like 3 spreadsheets to do this, and it was miserable,
Yes.
and this is amazing. It saves me so much time. So
Yeah.
I'm glad
No,
I'm
definitely.
glad I have a fellow person who appreciates that.
Oh
Because
my
yeah,
God, yeah,
it was
that
a
was
lot.
such a big one. No,
Yeah.
because I like tech design, nerd out on all that stuff, right? Like that's my whole life is the technical design side of things. And it's the small things like that that you don't realize how much time it like sucks out of your week or out of your days to do these kinds of conversions and make sure everything's accurate. And to have a tool that just does it for you is amazing. And that's like downplaying all the other amazing things that are in OnBrand, that like weird little
Mhm.
nerdy thing that I picked up on in the demo.
Yeah, it's because you know how painful it was to do in spreadsheets, and so you saw it and you're like, oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's usually how it goes too when we're whether you're a designer and you see like, oh, that's so easy to I don't have to fill out like 10 fields to
Right.
create a new style. I just like click a button, or I can
Yeah.
do it directly from Illustrator. I don't have to leave. Like it's little things like that for everybody's unique workflow that like you see the light bulb go on, and it's really fun.
Yeah, talk about that one a little bit. So last week I talked a little bit about essentially the great tech pack debate, right? Like everybody's out there
Hmm.
saying, what's the best way to build a tech pack? Is it Illustrator? Is it Excel? Is it a PLM system?
Hmm.
And I believe that at the end of the day, Illustrator is still the best place to do your sketches, but you guys have an
Hmm.
integration, right? Can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I don't think there's much of a debate left, but
I
obviously
agree.
I'm
I
super
agree.
biased. The way we see our customers using the tool most effectively is still doing like our goal never has been and never will be to rip designers out of Illustrator.
I
And
love
even
that.
if we tried, it's never going to work because they
Right.
love it. The tool is fantastic, and Adobe, is a fantastic tool.
Yes.
And that would be not a good idea to try to go after them for something like that.
Agree.
But instead, there's a lot of ways to make that workflow easier and more seamless. And maybe a really good example is a customer we just recently onboarded. She was using Illustrator and then saving those design files and pasting them in Excel into her like Excel-based tech pack template. And I think she was doing like 100 styles at any given time
Wow.
across maybe 3 or 4 collections. And they went through a logo redesign. And so she's like, okay, cool. I can update that in Illustrator. I have to open up 100 Illustrator files and update it in 100 places, right? Just like a lot of manual work. And then she had to save all of those new logo files and open up the tech packs, edit them, replace them, save them as like, version 2 or whatever,
Yep.
and then email all those back to the factory.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure any designer listening to this probably has 50 stories just like
Yep.
that of like,
Yep.
oh yeah, I had to update this one thing or this one palm, we had to change, or oh
Yep.
this we used the wrong Pantone color, so now I have to go back in for every every colorway that's using this color in this collection. Like everybody's got stories. And while Illustrator is amazing for doing so much of the work, where you really get the value is mass updates of, yeah,
Yes.
I want to update this logo. Cool. In our system, you do it in one place. When Ellie came onto our platform, they had to make, I don't think it was a logo redesign. It was a like an artwork file that they were using across a
Mhm.
bunch of products, but fairly similar concept.
Yeah.
And she's like, in 2 clicks, I just did what would have taken me literally days worth of works. I
Yeah.
replaced the file. I can sync it to Illustrator still, so I can still make my updates to that file in Illustrator, but then I push it to OnBrand, and then OnBrand in automatically, without her even touching anything, push that to all the tech packs that were used in the file and notified the vendor that, hey, there's an updated artwork file for you to download.
That's
And she's
amazing.
like, this is unreal. Like this gives me so much time back. So
That's so awesome. And I don't think people realize, number one, how long that actually takes when you are working, even if it's only 10 styles and you're updating one single thing, but it's on all of those 10 styles, like it could take you a good half of your day to go through and actually do all of those updates. And this
mhm.
is why I always tell people who can afford to go into a PLM system, this is why you want to consider it. It's because of that mass update thing where, like, if you want to change the code to a label, we're going to make this label code, I don't know, 002 instead of 001. I just go in and I update my library and then it flushes it out everywhere. And so
Mhm.
instead of having to go into all of these different individual files, I've done it once and it did the work for me. And I think that that's so huge, especially as your line grows and your brand grows and your company grows. To be able to work quickly and efficiently like that is paramount to being successful.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And just to add on to that, one of the most common reasons that people reach out to us to talk about PLM is, hey, I need a single source of truth.
Yes.
My product and design team is growing, and right now it's not sustainable to do manually because there's not any oversight. But then also, again, like how many times have you or anybody listening to this, have you wondered which version should I use of this spec, or which tech pack am I
Yep.
going to use? Right? It
Yep.
happens all the time, and that creates a lot of downstream issues of, hey, I accidentally edited the wrong, the last version of the tech pack instead of the newest one, and
Yes.
I sent it to the factory and now they're confused, but
Yep.
they're doing so much too that they're not going to maybe catch it. And so you get your next proto back and you're like, whoa, like why did we revert
We took a
here?
step
Right?
backwards. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what happened? And all of that is solved by having that common library of everybody has the most accurate, up to date information and knows what to use, instead of going into your email or
Yeah.
Dropbox or Google Drive, wherever you're storing all this information, and cloning an Excel
Yes.
file template. You just say, okay, cool. I want to pull a bomb from this product. I want to pull the spec from this product, and you're off to the races.
Yeah. And
So it's
it's
just
the right
such
one.
a
Yeah.
yes, 100%. So
Yeah. Huge difference. I love it. Now, you guys are operating as a pretty small team right now. Is that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
small team. We've got just under 10 full-time employees, but small and mighty is like
Small
what
and
I like
mighty.
to say.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. I think you guys are going to see a lot of amazing growth over these next couple of years. I think this is so needed. And as more and more people find out about it, I bet that team will be growing really fast.
well, I hope so. And to be honest, like that's the trajectory we're seeing. Like this is a really needed software. There needs to be some maybe disruption. Like I
Yeah.
don't really like using that word because
Yeah.
it's very cliche and like tech, but like that's kind of what it is and what we're doing, and just really trying to modernize the space, give people an option. And I think when I talk to people outside the industry, I think this falls a little flat, but I'm sure it will resonate with you. If you think back to a lot of the systems you've used, like how many of them would you say are designer friendly and
Ooh,
visually forward?
very few.
And it's because most of those systems grew from an ERP,
Hmm.
and instead take a financial perspective to how do I want to view this?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of teams, especially smaller teams, that are much more design focused. And it's not to say that OnBrand doesn't and can't do that stuff, because it can. But there's something to be said about like going into software. If I'm a designer and I'm a creative person and I open up a piece of software and I have to, go through spreadsheet looking, like it looks
Yes.
like I'm in MS DOS and I'm like, I don't know how to code. How do I use it?
Yes.
Like if you open up something like that, you just get so much resistance and pushback from creative teams. And so we've taken that approach of like, let's make this visually forward and appealing and something that people can very quickly, it's intuitive. Like you pick it
Yeah.
up, just like you get a new version of your iOS on your app, on your phone, and it's like, oh, I know how to use that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And, you know, I've been in a lot of big places where I don't know if our design teams would have been able to raise their hand and say, I don't want to use this, but
mhm,
I can see how that happens at some smaller brands where all of a sudden this tool is just not what I thought it was, or it's not very helpful, or I'm not like jazzed to get into it every day. And all of a sudden there's this huge disconnect. And so
mhm,
like making that seamless, I think is also really important to encourage people to want to use it and collaborate more. Cause that's really what it's all about. It's like getting all the teams really into one space, one
mhm,
place of truth, like you said, so that
yep,
everybody can be kind of connected in this one area.
mhm, yeah. And that's another piece we haven't really touched on either is this whole concept of collaboration.
Yes.
I'm sure that you're remembering back to like the demo that you've
Yeah.
seen and how it's so much different having a tech pack that is web based, right? You can still download it as a PDF or Excel file if you want, but getting rid of versions has
Yeah.
been really impactful for a lot of people. It's a little bit of like a mindset shift of like, oh, so if I make a bunch of changes here, it'll just automatically tell my factory, and then I can see if my factory has seen the changes. Like that's pretty cool. It's a little
Yeah.
bit of like some spycraft that's built into it, but we always get questions from people, and I don't know if you feel this way too. And so maybe I'll leave this as a question of like, are you ever concerned when you're thinking about implementing a tool like this that's going to have heavy involvement from your factory, and you're going to want your factory or factories
Mhm.
involved in it? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
That's come up a lot as I've worked in different PLM systems in the past. Only one have I ever implemented where we actually invited our factory to be able to see like everything that we were actually doing in the PLM. Otherwise, it's always been
Mm-hmm.
very manual. I will say the few things that we were hesitant to bring them in on was like our inside costing information and pricing information because we still wanted to be able to negotiate with them. And we were always afraid that if they kind of saw all of the numbers that we
Mm-hmm.
would lose negotiating power. So I think it was always important for us to know where we could turn that feature on and where we could turn it off so that we could hide certain things or keep certain things proprietary. And so that was always kind of an important conversations that we had when it came to our vendors.
Mm-hmm. How involved were they in terms of just sending and receiving communication? Like you request a new sample, was that happening in PLM typically or tech packs? Was that still, were you emailing those? Like what was your normal experience?
The normal experience that I've had is that instead of having to email everything and everything's living inside of our email, we can
Mm-hmm.
basically notify them via the PLM
Mm-hmm.
system that a new tech pack or a new version or a new set of comments or whatever is available to you in here. I
Mm-hmm.
think what I liked a lot, what I saw in OnBrand was that there was a way to continue the communication in the actual system. So there's like a commenting system where we can ping back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. And it
Yeah.
almost feels like direct messaging as opposed to
Yeah.
now I live in my email while also in this PLM system every single day. There wasn't a lot of actual collaboration in any of the past PLM systems that I've been in. It was more just
Mm-hmm.
like they could see the latest version or they could see
Yeah.
what we had updated, but it stopped there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rings true for like
Yeah.
everybody we talk to. And I think what people are always concerned about is like, especially if I'm a smaller brand and you don't have, you're not 50% of the production capacity of your factory.
Right. Right.
And so you're like, okay, if I ask them to change how they're communicating with me, like I'm going to get pushback.
Sure.
And so the approach we've taken is first of all, let's enable people to still communicate how they've always communicated. You can always download your tech pack and send it just
Yes.
like normal.
Mhm.
But we wanted to make effectively a vendor portal that is easier for them to use also than opening up their email and having like an email thread. Like it's so common, and I just like every time I hear it, I can't believe that people still work like this. But where it's like, okay, if I have one style, I have one email thread, and it might have like 10 or 15 replies long, and that's
Yep.
how we manage communication.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And that is very typical. And I think I just want to like let the audience know like how rare it is to actually have vendor integration as a part of the out of the box solution for a PLM system. Usually that costs like another $100,000 and a whole other like there's a whole other layering system that has to go into it to invite your
mhm,
vendors in. That's what I've always considered like the pinnacle of
mhm,
PLM, but it was always so far out of reach. And so
mhm,
I think you guys are doing so many things right. And so I kind of
mhm.
just wanted to thank you for that because I think
Yeah.
this is so needed. And I'm actually not the kind of brand owner who has been an affiliate of anything in the past because I've never felt so strongly that like this is a solution that I can 100% stand behind until I met you guys and found OnBrand. So I want the audience to know that I don't take this lightly, but we are now an affiliate of OnBrand. I am so happy to recommend it to as many people who want to get into it. And if you're interested in learning more about it or getting on a call with their team, you can go to thebusinessofapparel.com/onbrand and you will come to a page where you can set up a call with them and get on and figure out how they could help you and your brand because I think more people need to get into it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for the plug.
Yeah.
Obviously, I agree. So,
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get more people headed your way. Again, I'm just so pleased to be a part of it and to have found it. And we've got some clients hopefully headed your way soon and really just getting this rolling because to be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever told anybody this. I'll admit it on the podcast. It was always kind of an underlying goal of mine that like, 10 years from now, if the company really takes off, maybe we'll build a PLM system that actually works. And now I'm like, well, I just found something that did work. So I don't need to take on that huge endeavor. Someone's already done it for me. So thank you for that. I'm very excited.
well, awesome. I'm glad that we could be the solution to your problems, and yeah, hopefully, echo what you said for your listeners. If they're ever struggling with, I wish we had a great tool for us, whether they're on one and they want something more modern or different or better or whatever, reach out to us. Or, I think a lot of people that are familiar with PLM think if I want a good solution, I'm paying a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
And I just want them to know that we have tools for people of all stages, including, design teams of one.
Yeah.
And we can get people set up, and we invest probably too much, honestly. And when I look at the numbers, and I'm like, oh, like we're not going to make any money on this deal in year one. So much of us being successful is our customers being successful and using the platform. And we view every interaction as a 10-year relationship. And
Correct.
so we treat it like that, including investing heavily in year one, getting people set up, migrated, having, unlimited support for people so that
Just huge.
they're actually using the platform and loving it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for just letting us know all about OnBrand. Thank you for creating it. And thank you for being here with me today on the podcast. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, ditto. I had a great time. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you like this episode, please go over to our page and sign up for a call with Preston and his team and write us a review. Thank you so much for being here today, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.